Hi third graders, it's great to be here with you today. Today we're going to read more from our read aloud story, Rump by Lisa Shirtliff. And today we're on chapter 5. Chapter 5 is super short, so today we're actually going to read chapter 5 and chapter 6. I feel like yesterday I was left wanting to read a little bit more. Does that ever happen to you? Where you usually read one chapter and you're reading, but you really want to keep going? I felt that way yesterday, so I'm kind of excited to read 2 chapters today. Let's keep an eye and an ear out, mostly just an ear, I guess, since we're just reading. Keep an ear out for some fairy tales that you can connect with in the next few chapters. So throughout the book, we've heard Rump reference other fairy tales. So he's talked about when the witch stole the baby and put her in a tower. So that's kind of like Rapunzel. And then last time, the peddler who turned a piece of fluff into a mouse got all of the mice out of the city. It was an accident, but he did. And that's kind of like the Pied Piper. So I don't know if other fairy tales are going to pop up in the next few chapters, but let's keep an ear out. Okay, so here we go. Chapter 6 is called Gold, Gold, Gold. That night I jerked awake to a shrill hum. A swarm of pixies hovered over me. One was on the tip of my nose, another on my ear, and 2 were walking down my chest. Several danced on my hands and chirped excitedly. I held very still. I didn't want another attack like in the woods. If only I had set a bucket of dirt by my bed. They tugged at my fingers, and with their combined efforts, I felt an actual pull to get up. It was still dark. Only a faint glow of moonlight spilled through the window, illuminating my bed and the spinning wheel. Across the room, Grand's snores were deep and even, undisturbed by the chattering and screeching of the pixies. Suddenly, they were right in my ears, and their shrieks and chirps went straight to the center of my brain and shook my skull. They were saying something. I had to strain to listen, but they were chanting excitedly. I didn't know pixies could say real words. Gold, 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 it sounded like. The pixies tugged at my hair and ears and clothes. Dozens were wrapped around my fingers, furiously beating their wings in an effort to lift me from my bed. They were pulling me toward the spinning wheel. And in that moment, an idea cracked open in my brain. It was like an egg had been sitting there quietly for a long time, and suddenly the egg hatched, and out came the idea. Let's think about what kind of figurative language that is. It was like an egg. Like an egg. Had been sitting there quietly for a long time, and suddenly the egg hatched, and out came the idea, and it was flying all around in my brain, and would not stop flying and chirping until it was let out. So he's comparing his thoughts to a bird flying around in his brain, and he uses the word like, so that would be a simile, right? Awesome. I had to let it out. What if pixies couldn't just sense gold inside the mountain? What if they could also sense it in a person, in someone who might possess the magic to take one thing, like a piece of fluff or wool or straw, and turn it into gold, gold, gold? I rose from my bed and moved toward the spinning wheel. The pixies squeaked and flitted back and forth between me and the wheel. I placed my hand on the wheel and felt a vibration run through me. I spun it with my hand and listened to the whirring as if it had something to say that I needed to hear. Destiny. That's what that was. I had no wool. The pixies had taken it the last time I tried to spin. I looked around the cottage. There were chicken bones and chicken feathers and bits of yarn. There were quilts and dishes and the big empty kettle in the hearth. I looked down at my feet. Destiny. It's right under your feet. Just dirt and straw, I said out loud. Gold, 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 the pixies sang in response. I gathered the straw from the ground until I had a handful. I sat at the wheel. A few pixies fluttered around my hands and the straw and the bobbin. Gold, gold, gold. I fed the straw into the wheel. Whir, whir, whir. I spun the straw. My breath caught in my chest. I stopped, unable to believe what I was seeing. In my hands were bits of straw, but around the bobbin were glowing, shimmering threads. I brushed my fingers over the threads, smooth and warm. Gold. I had just spun straw into gold. I let my breath out and my whole chest swelled. Straw, more straw. I scrounged for more straw on the ground, all the little bits I could pick up. I fed them through the wheel. More gold. I ripped open my mattress and pulled out the straw. Who needed a straw mattress when you could sleep on gold? I laughed and chanted rhymes as I spun. One gold thread will buy me bread. A pile of thread makes a crown for my head. Whir, whir, whir. I fed the straw into the wheel, rhythmically pulling and twisting it, and it made the most beautiful sound as it transformed into gold. A tinkling song, soft yet vibrant. More pixies burst from the crevices, and they all danced on the gold, twittering and screeching. Gold, gold, gold. I laughed. I loved pixies. I slid the silky gold off the bobbin and onto the floor to make room for more. I spun all the straw on my mattress. I spun until morning broke through the little window and sunlight made the gold glimmer. I stood and admired the fruits of my labor. A fortune lay at my feet. Enough to feed me and Gran for the rest of our lives. Gran was still sound asleep, though. The sky was lightening. Lately, she slept until after I left for the mines, but I was so excited I wanted to wake her and show her our fortune. This was my destiny. I could be rich and fat and happy. A shadowy movement caught the corner of my eye. I jerked around and saw a figure ducking beneath the window. I ran to the door and stepped outside. Two people were running down the street. Against the rising sun, they were just two black shapes, but I knew those hulking outlines well. Frederick and Bruno. I started to shake. All the excitement drained from me. I didn't care why they had come here or what trick they had been waiting to play. I was only worried about one thing. Had they seen the gold? So that was chapter 6. So now we're on chapter 7. I'm going to read this one as well today. Chapter 7. Gold means food. I tucked the gold beneath my blankets. The warm happiness I had felt at seeing all that gold fizzled as fast as snow on a hot griddle. Now I had, that's also a simile, right? The warm happiness I had felt at seeing all the gold fizzled as fast as snow on a hot griddle. So he is comparing his feelings about being happy. They just disappeared as snow would be on like a hot pancake griddle or whatever you'd put on the stove to cook. All right. Now I had a weighty, guilty, heart-pounding, sick to my stomach dread. I didn't leave for the mines when I should have. I sat on top of the gold and thought of all the things that could happen. Frederick and Bruno might think I stole the gold. If they told, I could be arrested. I could go to the dungeons for the rest of my life, or even lose my life. I had to tell Gran. Gran would know what to do. But when she rose from her bed and looked so old, tired, so pale, and stooped, I couldn't tell her. Any more weight on those shoulders and Gran would crumble to the ground. And I remember the way she had reacted when I first found the spinning wheel. She didn't want me to spin, and now I realized it wasn't because I couldn't do it, because I could spin more than thread or yarn. I could spin straw into gold. And Gran had tried to keep me from doing it. What kind of magic was this? No, I could not tell Gran, but I needed to tell someone because I felt heavy with worry, and I wouldn't know whether my worry was real or not until I said it out loud to someone. The only person I could think to tell was Red. When Gran wasn't looking, I removed the bobbin from the spinning wheel, wrapped it in a rag, and tied it to my waist. I didn't see Frederick or Bruno in the mines. Any other day, this would have made me happy, but today it made me feel anxious. The pixies swarmed around me more than ever. When I threw dirt over my head, they'd fly away for a minute or two, but they would always come back. So I just let them crawl all over me, their tiny chant ringing in my ears. Gold, gold, gold. Wow, look at him. Look at the pixies, said a little girl working closest to me along the sluice. You must find hordes of gold. I didn't find a speck. When the sun was low, I waited for Red to come out of the tunnels. She had dirt smeared all over her face and looked cross. She walked right past me, but I still followed her. What do you want? She asked. I want to show you something. Show me then. I looked around wary, and I need to tell you something. She walked even faster. So tell me something. It has to be someplace where no one will see or hear. I brushed the pixies out of my eyes, and where there are as few pixies as possible. Red scowled at me and kept walking, but after a while she stopped and turned back. Hurry up, I'm hungry. I followed Red down the mountainside and through the village. When we passed the mill, I got a cold prickle on my neck, like something was watching me. I hurried past. I guess I shouldn't have been surprised when Red went into the woods, but it was getting cold and dark. I stopped just inside the trees. Where are we going? I asked. To the place where no one will hear or see and where there are no pixies. That is what you want, isn't it? Red folded her arms impatiently. Is it safe? I asked. If you stay on the path and don't ask questions. What path? I looked down and my mouth fell open. There was a path beneath my feet, clearly trodden and winding further into the woods. I would have sworn it hadn't been there before. I had never seen it. How? I said, but Red cut me off. I said, don't ask questions. I closed my mouth and followed. Red led us deep into the woods, much deeper than I'd usually go. She didn't seem afraid, though. In fact, she seemed more comfortable here than she was in the village. She touched the trees as if they were friends. A bird fluttered down to a low branch and chirped as though he were saying something to Red, and I had the feeling she understood the bird, even though she pretended not to notice. Do you come here often? I asked. Red glared at me. Sorry, I wasn't supposed to ask questions, but questions were all that rose to my mind. The path curved and twisted. Where was she taking me, and how much farther was it? I bit my tongue to keep in the questions. Then I started to hear something, a low hum. It got louder as we walked. Suddenly, we rounded a corner and came upon a giant fallen tree. The tree was swarming with bees. I froze. I saw Red's thinking, of course. Bees and pixies don't like each other, so when you find a swarm of one, you probably won't find the other. But bee stings didn't sound much better than pixie bites. I stayed far back. Red walked right up to the edge of the swarm. Slowly, like a creeping cat, she moved through the buzzing wall of bees, reached her hand down a log, and pulled out a chunk of honeycomb dripping with golden honey. She moved back just as slowly. Bees crawled all over her hands and arms, and even her face, but she didn't flinch, and soon they all flew away back into their honey log. She broke the honeycomb in half and gave me a piece. Gold you can eat, she said, and we licked the sticky mess. You could trade this for grain, I said. Probably lots. Wouldn't want to, said Red. Why? She could get a whole sack of grain just for this one chunk of honeycomb. Because some of these people like to keep to themselves. This has always been my tree, and I don't want anyone else to know about it. If you tell, I'll punch your teeth out. It made me feel really special that she would share this with me. And don't think you can come here without me either. I won't. Promise? Promise. Even if I dared to walk this far into the woods alone, I wouldn't be able to get honeycomb like she did, not without getting stung 1,000 times. We sucked all the honey off and chewed the waxy comb. Then we licked our fingers. It was so sweet I almost forgot why we had come here until Red pointed at the bundle tied to my waist and asked, "What did you want to show me?" I untied the bobbin and held it out for her to see. She glanced at it and stared blankly at me. It was my mother's, I said. Red raised her eyebrows, suddenly interested. She was a spinner from yonder. I looked at her, confused. Yonder? Gran never told me my mother was from yonder, and she didn't tell me about the spinning until I found the wheel. It made me mad that Red knew these things and I didn't. How do you know that? How did you know she was a spinner? Some people know, she said, not looking at me, and I could tell she was hiding something. What people? Some people, she said, her nostrils flared. The bobbin, I said. I think it's special. I didn't want to say magic. I knew how Red felt about that. It's just a bobbin, she said. But special, maybe. How special? What does it do? I chose my word carefully. I think it spins things different, makes things change. Bobbins don't spin. They just catch whatever you're spinning. Then her eyes widened as though she suddenly realized something. What did you spin? Nothing, I said quickly. What if you could spin one thing into something different, not just wool, into yarn? Such as, what if you could take straw and spin it into gold? Red stared at me. I couldn't tell what she was thinking. We need gold. Wouldn't that be great? Maybe. She didn't believe me. If a cow can give milk and chickens lay eggs and dragons can make fire, then why can't a magic bobbin make gold? Because this bobbin isn't magic, she said. But you might be. Me? Magic? No, I'm not. Using magic was one thing. Being magic sounded like a mountain of disaster. If anything changes to gold when you spin, it's coming from inside you, not the bobbin. How do you know? I'm just guessing. Well, maybe you're guessing wrong. Red sighed. It doesn't really matter where the magic is coming from. What matters is it's magic, and magic makes trouble. Your mother used magic to spin, and she got into a lot of trouble because of it. There's always a consequence for using magic. But this would be a good consequence, I said. Gold. Yes, and gold would solve a lot of problems. Stomach problems, for sure. Maybe, but, and it's not like I want it all for myself. Red hit me on the head, so I would stop talking. Those are just the natural, regular consequences, Rump. There will be magical consequences, too. Magic has its own rules. How do you know? Don't tell me it's a guess. Red gritted her teeth. Didn't you learn anything when you watched Kessler get chased by every mouse on the mountain? But nothing happened when I spun. I didn't catch on fire or get attacked by mice. I just made gold. Fat skeins of gold that could feed the whole village. I clapped my hands over my mouth, but Red didn't look surprised. Rump, she said in a soft voice. Does anyone know about this? I sighed. Frederick and Bruno were looking through the window this morning, right after I spun the gold. Red frowned. But, I went on, if only to make myself feel better, they probably didn't know what they were seeing. Probably just looked like a pile of yarn to them. Red's frown deepened. And that's when I realized what kind of worry I had. The worry went from my head and sunk down to my chest and settled to a sickness in my stomach. Frederick and Bruno might be complete idiots, but any village idiot knows gold when they see it. The next rations day, the line at the mill was very long. Everyone was eager to stock up before winter came, and it was almost here. The air was biting now. Excuse me. The air was biting now. There was always frost in the mornings. The pixies were more subdued, and they began building nests for their winter sleep. Now we were just waiting for the snow. When it was my turn, the miller gave me a sack of meal, bigger than usual. I looked at him surprised. No one else got much meal. Gold means food, the miller said gleefully. I looked at him confused. I'd only found a few pebbles of gold in the last week, and the miller wasn't kind or generous. I opened the sack just outside the cottage, and a thick, dusty powder billowed out. I choked and coughed as the dust went into my lungs. The miller had filled the bag with chalk and sawdust. Gold means food. The miller was giving me a message. All right, scholars, so that is chapter 7. I hope that you enjoyed chapter 6 and chapter 7. I think that the miller's personality is coming out a little more now, and that I also think that maybe Frederick and Bruno spilled the beans to some people in the village. So tomorrow we'll check back in with chapter 8 and chapter 9, because again, it's kind of a short chapter, and I just love this book, so I hope that you are loving it too, and that it's giving you ideas for your fairy tales. Have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you tomorrow. Bye.